Hey guys, welcome back to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of digital and creative media works, where each week we take something from pop culture and try to break it down to better understand it. My name is David.
My name is Ben.
Benjamin, it's tension month. We're here. It's tense. We're all tensed up.
Is that what we're doing this month?
Yeah, we're big balls of stress.
Did we do that last month?
No, that's the same month. Last week's episode was this month.
Last week?
It was pitch black.
Oh, yeah, that was also tense.
Yep. Did you forget what day and month it is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with you,
Welcome
man.
to the middle of the year.
It's checked out. Every day's the same. Every day's a fucking Monday. We thought, why not do something topical after doing something that came out in 2000? Why not do something current?
Came out like a month ago. Yeah.
And something that, it's a TV series that I've watched the whole way through, and I don't think you ever. You only seen the Bandersnatch one, right?
Oh, I've seen others. I've seen bits here and there, but I'm not like up to date.
Have you seen the John Hamm one?
No,
because it's the best one.
Okay.
White Christmas.
Sorry.
No, that's all good. Watch it at Christmas. It'll make you real sad.
Cool. All right.
Which, if you haven't guessed it already, this week we are talking about the tension of Black Mirror Season 5.
Episode 1?
Specifically Episode 1, Striking Vipers.
Not because one of us didn't watch the rest of the episodes, but because when they watched the first episode, they went, no, I'm good.
But a little bit because of that.
For a little bit because of that.
For those of you who don't know, Striking Vipers is the first episode of Black Mirror's Season 5, a surreal thriller set in the near future, starring Anthony Mackie, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, written by Charlie Brooker and directed by Owen Harris. Owen Harris is sort of the guy who does a lot of the really successful Black Mirror episodes. He kind of has this abstracted kind of something about his lens that feels very distant.
So he's
detached.
the Moffat as a writer.
No, he's the director. So Charlie Brooker does all the writing. Harris is doing all the directing. Okay. So in that analogy, Brooker would be the Russell T Davies.
Yeah.
And Owen Harris would be like, I don't know.
This is a really bad analogy.
Harris would be the Neil Gaiman if he was also a director.
Okay.
I don't know why we went down that rabbit hole.
It's a weird one.
Before we get into the summary, what did you think coming into it? And
man, it's like so my like takeaway from it was, on one hand, there's like Black Mirror episodes, at least the ones I've seen, because I've seen sort of a few ones here and there. They're always about, when you explain it to someone, it's always, you explain the episode in the context of like the technology that they kind of riff on. Mm-hmm. But the episodes are usually about like the social impact of that technology.
Yeah.
But I think this episode, like more than any of the others I've seen, and again, I've only seen like 4 or 5 episodes total. Mm-hmm. I think it's like the social takeaway is just so interesting.
It's so fascinating.
And it's not like shocking or like horrifying. It's just like,
it makes you
like, what are they doing here? Like, it's a weird one, and I have a lot of thoughts about it.
I have a lot of questions, so I'm hoping that your thoughts can answer my questions.
Okay.
So I've seen this episode 3 times in preparation for this. So I've watched it once.
I've seen it once.
So I watched it once, watched it again for research, and then so last night after I watched John Wick, I rewatched the first John Wick again.
That's a good one.
I don't think it holds up as much as the other 2.
Really?
Yeah. I was telling Pat in the car.
I might go back and...
Yeah, it's a bit bland compared to the other 2. Right. Not what we're talking about, but I watched it afterwards because I was like, I'll give it another crack, and I had a few whiskeys, so I checked it out, and
in that kind of mood.
I have to say that third viewing was when a lot of things started to line up for me. Like, it started to all slot into place what they were trying to do, and versus what they achieved, I think.
Okay.
And I'm curious to kind of pick through that, because I think there is definitely a lot of potential in this episode and in this idea for this particular story to explore some concepts that haven't really been explored ever.
Yes, I agree.
But I think the execution, whether it's there or not, is something we'll get into. I have a lot of complicated thoughts about it. So let's get through the summary quickly, because I think the meat of this is going to be the discussion, because I do think there's a lot to unpack, and especially given your background and your like experiences with VR and like computer programming, and like I worked in software, and I think this is going to be an interesting one for me, at least, to kind of find out your thoughts. So Danny and Theo are living happily together with their son Tyler and aspire to have a second child. Danny's old friend Carl gifts him a virtual reality fighting game called Striking Vipers X. The 2 boot up the game. Within the VR, both players can feel the physical sensations of their characters. As the 2 pick their favorite characters from their childhood, they begin their first fight and end up kissing. The 2 then regularly meet in the game to have virtual sex. Theo, obviously noticing something is wrong in their marriage, confronts Danny about his distance. Danny puts the game away and ignores Carl's texts. Many months later, Theo surprises Danny by inviting Carl over for dinner. Carl tells Danny that he's been unable to recreate the sensation felt when having sex with him in VR. The pair then have sex in the game again and try to kiss in real life, but neither of them feel a spark. They begin arguing and fighting, and a passing police officer arrests them. Later, it's Danny's birthday again, and he's permitted to have sex with Carl and Striking Viper's ex, in return for Theo going to a bar and meeting men without her wedding ring. Credits.
Well, that's a very quick summary.
Well, it's not a very complicated
No,
plot.
not a lot happens, and I think it's in the details, and it's in the sort of the nuance of the episode where I think it's a lot of the sort of the messaging comes out.
Right. So I've got really two lines of thinking with this that I've kind of come at it from. The other is like so the first one is the question of kind of what. So there's the question of what does reality, quote unquote, mean? Not in like a Matrix sense, but just like in a general sense where it's like,
sure,
which relationship is more real? Is it like the VR or the real life, whatever? The other kind of line of questioning I have is the sort of the argument for qualia, which we've talked about as a philosophical concept before, which is that idea of like the layers of abstraction that we discuss a lot with video games, where it's like games that you connect to really readily, like VR table tennis has very little layers of abstraction. Before we do that, I just wanted to like touch.
I have completely different thoughts about this episode.
Well, I don't know. I don't. Those aren't really thoughts I have. Those are more things that are proposed questions for me.
Okay.
So I'll get your thoughts in a minute, but I just wanted to like give you some of the background of. Well, actually, why don't you tell me your thoughts on it, and then we can pick into that, and then I'll give you some of the general consensus from the internet on what they think of it.
Sure. So what I took away from this was sort of a weird kind of deconstruction of like the nature of infidelity, and just like they're presenting it in a way where I think it's that they're managing to take what is always two sides of a story in like an affair and present them as like equal sides, which I think is really interesting. And then just also just the way that they tackle this eventual technically polyamorous relationship.
Yeah.
Just kind of happens.
It's like it's in the credits.
Yeah, and just, you know, that kind of relationship is like, it's so hard to present that in like any form of media because people just don't understand it. Even I don't understand it. It's a bit, you know, a bit alien to me. But
yeah,
I've like this, I feel like just does like such a good job. And also just like the nature of you just like gender in the sense that one of the guys is playing as a female character and has sex as a woman, but he's a man.
It's very
this episode does a lot that I think it's just like they kind of touch on it, and I think for me that was like the big takeaway. I was just like, oh, they've done some weird shit with like gender and sexuality in this episode.
That was kind of what I meant when I said that no one had really done it this way before.
Yeah.
I think like it does pose a lot of really interesting questions about like sexuality, and I think in particular masculinity, because Danny and Carl are both like typical physical masculine heterosexual jacked dudes.
Black.
They're also both black,
also
which is
very
interesting.
important to the story.
And
not important to the story, but important to that message.
Yeah, and I guess look, I like that it touches on it, and I don't think that this is the platform to like delve into it in like, you know, a depth that could do it justice. But a lot of the criticism from the internet is that rather than delving into the psychology and engaging with the philosophy of like the sexuality of these dudes, we just kind of see them dealing with it how normal bro dudes would deal with it. Like they have the punch up at the end, and for me, that's kind of faithful writing from Brooker, right? He's saying if this happened to you as like a regular, normal, heterosexual, straight dude, the way you deal with it would be like a dust up, right?
You'd punch up.
You're not going to sit there and have like a chat about what reality is.
Because again, they're taking both sides of this like storyline that happens a lot in media, which is like the affair, which is for most parts like between a man and a woman, because that's just media. And
I would think even between not even man and woman, but it would be between you and your preferred sexual preference partner, because in this instance it's a affair between two men who are both straight. So I think that's the bit I've never seen before. And
it's this weird thing where in media, you know, as soon as you have that kind of, you know, as soon as you bring in the idea that, oh, these characters are gay, everyone's just like, oh, it's just a Brokeback Mountain. Like, you know, that like Brokeback Mountain as like a film is like so, it's like these burly boys doing like manly stuff, but there's so much like that film was just like, we're just gonna pump it full of like tenderness and love, which a lot of people are like, it's girly. So that film didn't do a lot for like
it's
kind of the image.
That film is an interesting misinterpretation of the short story, because the short story the film does a similar thing where it starts off as like this aggressive kind of sexual release, and then it becomes that tender kind of loving thing, and it's really beautiful in the short story. The film, I think, handles it less well.
Right.
But
whereas I think with this, like they never go to that like tenderness area. It's always like the sex is just rough and gritty and gross.
The sex is, but then there's several scenes where you get to see them just kind of like hanging out and cuddling in the VR.
Yeah, and like that's...
But you're right. But I think you're right. It's the same as Brokeback Mountain. The sex is always this aggressive release, right?
Yeah.
It's like this release from reality. Whereas
even when they are like talking, it's like it's still like dumb like man shit. Like, how does it feel like to get fucked when you have a vagina?
Yeah,
like, who asks that?
They're not talking about their feelings.
No, right.
I mean, it's like
they do, but when they go to like,
but they talk about their feelings not in VR.
Yeah, when like the sort of turning point when they're like when they meet in real life and they kiss, that's like, in any other sort of story, it would be like they have feelings for each other, but it's like no, they're both just like nah. But then one of them, he's still like, yeah, but it's good in VR, right? Right. It's like it's such like a, I don't know, like a pornographic thing.
Let me read you this quote from Guy Lodge from The Guardian when he's writing he wrote an article.
This is real. Yeah, this is real reviews.
So this is like in his piece about it. I wouldn't really call it a criticism, but it's his kind of thoughts
it's his
about
hot take.
And he says, quote, "There, as a heterosexual pair of fighting gods, they are sexually liberated while ironically conforming on the artificial surface to social norms. Back in reality, an experimental kiss between the two men is mutually agreed to be a non-arousing non-starter. If their body language subtly suggests otherwise, the script lets the matter lie." End quote. So I think Guy Lodge is a fucking moron. This whole article, and
sorry,
I'll come at you, Guy Lodge. I know that you're a very decorated writer, but
Jesus Christ.
But
you're really punching up right now.
Basically, his whole thing is that this piece of content, this episode, doesn't go deep enough. It's too shallow. And he's like, but it should delve more into the sexuality. It allows them to conform to these heterosexual norms in real life while giving them the sexual liberation in VR or whatever. Yeah. I think,
it does.
Which is not missing the point. That's the point of it. Is it's saying, hey, if that is the case, how do you deal with that in a society?
It make like this is, when you think about, again, I'm going to come back to the fact because like this is like an affair story. When you think about stories that have these kind of arcs in them, there's always the protagonist and then like the homewrecker. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is like both Carl and, you're going to have to remind me of his name.
Danny.
Both Carl and Danny, you're shown like a pretty decent chunk of their lives. They have different, goals and aims. Like Danny's a
family man.
Danny's more of a family man, whereas Carl is sort of living that bachelor life. Like two fairly sort of stereotypical, like masculine social norms, gender norms kind of archetypes. And they're saying, what if these two people had an affair? Mm-hmm. Like, it's not the family man with like the hot neighbor. It's not the bachelor with the porn. It's
the bachelor with the family
It's the bachelor with the family man. Like, that presents such this interesting idea where, as a viewer, especially as a male viewer, you're able to, and especially as a male viewer of an episode about VR, which I'm very interested in, you're able to see it from both sides. So when Carl gets like the message when he's at the tailor, and he gets the call and he quickly rushes outside because he's like so keen to talk to his bro. You're just like, oh, he really likes him. Yeah. Like, it's not like, oh, he's needy or oh, he's desperate. It's just like, no, he just enjoys.
He's cool, man. Yeah, he's cool.
He's close. He likes him.
How cool are the foldable smartphones?
I want those.
I want them in real life.
That's the Motorola. That's the new Motorola Razr.
That's
basically.
a real phone. Is it?
It's about $6,000, but it's like that's the new one, the new Motorola Razr. It's got that. It's got that foldy. I'm pretty sure it's actually like almost product placement. Dave was just doing a Google for this phone.
You keep doing the episode. Galaxy Fold. No, that's
no. That's the shit vertical one. It's the Motorola. It's the Motorola.
Yo.
Phone. Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. It's hype.
That's hot. I didn't realize that was.
But yeah, like you get that perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that is like super important. I think that for me was like the major
really interesting.
major takeaway.
Yeah.
I think the sexuality thing, I don't think they don't really delve into it
the
that
script
much.
is less interested in it, which I think what's happening is people who are very left about media are like criticizing it for not delving into it enough, and I think I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, but I don't think that's what the script is trying to do. I think the episode
that's kind of bad faith criticism.
I think so, because the story's more interested in saying, yeah, you're right. It's more about infidelity, and it uses the vehicle of this VR that we don't have at the moment to explore that.
Because I think the takeaway at the credits where they both.
Well, because for both of them, it's
it's like a liberation.
Yeah.
I think that's what the focus is. It's not about. I don't want to say it's not about sexuality, because polyamorism is inherently sexuality.
You mean that?
But to a lesser degree, it's like it's relationship dynamics rather than sexual preference.
Which is which is a really complicated thing to try and distill into. Because, we have the language for intersectionality with a lot of stuff at the moment, but that, whatever that is, that area of, like, grayness where it's like, this isn't necessarily about sexuality or about sexual preference, it's about the way that relationship with you and someone else is formed and how that functions.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a term in psychology for it, but to me, that's a really weirdly nuanced thing to be able to communicate in a TV episode about VR, essentially.
Yeah.
And I guess on the note of the VR, like, obviously I'm sure you have some interesting thoughts about this idea of a fighting game where you can feel things that are real, that then lets you not
where,
fight.
You have a penis.
Because, well, the other thing is
it's a bit weird.
Are they playing on controllers because so there's a lot of questions, but I think the main, because I don't want to get too much in the mechanics.
I mean, it showed that they're not playing on controllers
because it's
just like a brain interface.
It's like in your brain.
Yeah.
So here's the question then: is given that at one point Carl says something where he's like, nothing in real life compares to having sex, with you in the game. When they kiss in real life, they feel nothing. So we then to believe that it's the intersection of the VR, their relationship with the video game characters, and their two individual personalities that mean that this is so irreplaceable. Because at one point, Carl even says, I fucked a polar bear and I still can't get you out of my mind, which is the most iconic line of all time.
Absolutely.
Right? So is it the convergence of all of
my
those
favorite
things?
bit is where he talks about going online and sexually harassing other people. Like, that's fucked up. Like, I don't want that in my VR game. But I guess that's in this VR game.
Right, well, because, I guess that's the first thing that would happen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But so, I guess is the question is, do you think that it's the intersection of all of those things about these two people that makes that happen, or is it the nature of infidelity that it feels like it's irreplaceable?
I think, for me, the VR is so not, important to the story. For me, it's just the vehicle for creating this kind of dynamic between two people. Because you can't have a story with two men who are cheating on their wives or partners with each other. It's just they become gay, and that just adds so much onto the pile of what you expect from these characters, how you expect them to react in society, how you expect other people to react to them in society. Whereas I think with the VR and with them able to say yeah, he's now a girl, they're having straight sex, it just serves as a way to get rid of, there's even the line where he's just like, oh, is this gay? And he's just like, no, that's not gay.
Oh, no, also,
it's just a VR game.
Also the fact that all three of them are the same ethnicity, theoretically.
You're talking about the main character?
The main character, well, Danny, his Danny, Carl, and Theo.
Yeah, and
they're
also
all
Carl's girlfriend at the time, I guess.
Well, also... I take that as whatever, but it's I think that's more of a counterpoint. I just think the idea of there's also not that, you're right, there's not that added layer of now there's a race element in society. It is a very simple way of doing it.
It's very much they've managed to they've used VR as a way to pull off all of that extra baggage that would come with doing a story about two men in straight relationships having sex with each other. which is like it would label them as by most people gay, but correctly bi. But that suddenly turns it into a story about two bi men in relationships,
whereas this isn't
where
that.
they're unhappy and they're having sex with each other. Whereas this is different. It's two straight men who are like, it's implied that Danny isn't super like in, like, he's kind of like looking at other women and stuff like that, and Carl is like always on the hunt for young girls and stuff like that, because he waxes his balls, I guess. That's a line in the episode.
That's a great one.
But they're presented as like very straight men. But again, like, because you have these two male characters, and again, like most fucking protagonists in media currently are male. Like, there's a reason they've done this, and you can just see it from both perspectives. It's just that extra baggage they're able to get rid of.
I think one of the takeaways from it that you've correctly, like, I don't know, or that you've summarized really well that I haven't really thought about, is that this is the kind of thing that straight guys should watch.
Yes, absolutely.
Because what this does is this empowers you as a guy who might fail to empathize with the other side of infidelity. It empowers you to get how and why it happens.
Yeah.
Because you can, so like, as an example, in The Room, right, Tommy Wiseau's character is like, she's a bitch, she treated me poorly, she fucking cheated on me for no reason.
An insane piece of media to use as a reference.
And we never get her side of it, right?
Right.
And the whole film is this really like poorly nuanced. Sorry, it's a poorly written, but in being poorly written, an incredibly nuanced rendering of what it's like to be a guy who doesn't understand why infidelity happened and blames just the woman.
Yeah.
Or just the other person. Yeah. So I think this is the exact...
And most media gets caught up in that.
This is the exact antithesis of that, where it goes, actually, because what we can do in this scenario is we can abstract ourselves from the gender roles. And we can say, you're a straight dude. You understand straight dudes. Here's what it's like as a straight dude.
On both sides of the story.
So then when something like that does happen, or when someone says, oh, I'm sleeping with, someone that isn't my partner, or when someone is, unfaithful to you, or whatever it might be in the particular relationship you're in, I think it empowers you to be empathetic in a way that I can't imagine any other TV show giving its audience that ability in such a way that's really important right now. Yeah. Like, the world's kind of on fire, and I think that one of the things we can do is teach people to empathize. And I'm so impressed with they could have delved down the sexuality rabbit hole, but I don't think that's as valuable as them going, actually, let's have a look and let's say, hang on, you can relate to both of these dudes, right? Everyone's been the person who wants to, everyone can relate to the guy who wants to settle down. Everyone can relate to the guy who just wants to kind of sleep around and has this bachelor lifestyle and plays his cool ping pong game. Or whatever.
Once a year, gets to bone down his best friend.
Right. But it's like you suddenly go, oh, now I understand. Like, and also the fact that they have this kind of almost polyamorous relationship once a year, that you can see how people get to that. And instead of what happens now when it's like, polyamory, whatever, it's like you can kind of understand it.
Yeah. And I think that the reason more power is given to it as well, because they don't explicitly show like how it led to that point. We don't see the conversation between Danny and his, God, I wish I remembered her name. Theo. We don't see the conversation between Danny and Theo that leads to that decision they have where once a year they go and do their own thing. And you don't understand like they're like, there's bits about it, like, things in like polyamorous relationships, it's like things like boundaries, like what's okay, what's not, like what's the rules and shit like
also,
that.
like, what do you tell each other, what don't you, like, all that. It's very case by case.
Yeah, because it's case by case. I think that that's why they didn't show it. Yeah, because it's a case by case basis. It just shows like, here's a situation where two people who both showed a desire to sort of have that kind of relationship. We get it from Theo where they're talking on their anniversary, and she's talking about how she's had to like, she gets talk to guys at bars and she has to say no because she makes sacrifices and stuff like that. Whereas Danny this whole time is not making any sacrifice at all. He's just going in. And when they both come to this understanding of just like, all right, there are sacrifices we make, but then we've made agreements to like.
And it facilitates them having a second kid, which is what they wanted in the first place.
Yeah, I guess the victory. Yeah, You win.
Okay.
Good ending.
Let's yeah, no, definitely. Okay, let's like jump in a little bit deeper because I want to pick your brain about the VR. I know it's not the point of it,
Sure.
but I'm so curious.
You're just like, what the fuck? Yeah. Okay,
when we
sure.
talked about Serenity and you were like talking about like the AI and stuff, I was like, yes, please. I want to get your thoughts on this. Okay, so
Sure.
the question of what is real in the context of VR.
Mm.
Our main boy Lacan, he's getting back involved. He's coming back in the mix.
All right.
So Lacan would contend that the reason VR feels real for the characters in this story, I'm talking specifically about the story, is that there is no presence or absence in this VR. In real life, the characters and nostalgia of the game are absent. So what I'm trying to do is I'm comparing real life versus in the game. So in real life, the characters that they play, the avatars, are absent. And the nostalgia of the game, because obviously that's a part of it, is that they played Striking Vipers a lot when they were younger. In real life, those things aren't there. And also in real life, the relationships, ties, sexuality, everything else that Danny and Carl have are all present.
Right.
However, there's an argument to be made that the sex in the game is beyond the symbolic because there's something about it that transcends sexuality, race, age, appearance, even like gender preferences, like everything. And there's an argument to be made that it's an authentic, unchangeable, primordial, like something. Because and the reason that I'm kind of curious about this in this story is that they erase when they go into the game, they erase the symbolic because these are guys who've been conditioned by society or by their own preferences, or they were just born in a particular way in a sexual preference. They look a certain way, they act a certain way, they are a certain ethnicity. But in this game, they can choose to castrate themselves from that symbolism and just be whatever.
Right.
And isn't there an argument to be said for, like, you know, we talked about it last week with Riddick, with Pitch Black, rather, where it's like if you can completely castrate yourself from the symbolic ties you have, you can access, you know, whatever it is that underlies everything, whatever that single truth is. And I think you could make an argument, I'm just saying this is kind of my thoughts around it, is you could make an argument that this VR allows both individuals, Danny and Carl, to access this kind of sublime thing that doesn't exist. Like you can't the idea of the two characters that you played as, you know, when you were much younger dudes, that you kind of, one of them you found really attractive, and like the fact that relationship feels real doesn't make any sense in reality, so it must be sublime in some way. I don't know, there's something to that where I'm like, is when we get to that point in VR, because it's probably gonna fucking happen at some point. Like we've seen,
probably.
Like Ready Player One, like all that shit. It's like when you do get to that point, does that not that it feels more real, but that it feels more authentic because you're not tied by like Carl and Danny aren't tied by the fact that, you know, they're bachelors or they're family men or whatever. They just can experience this singular connection that is abstracted from everything. Do you think that as a society, like with VR, like is obviously we're going to get that technology wise, but is that something that is going to really fuck us all up, or what are your kind of thoughts on that, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah, we're fucked, right?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
all over, yeah.
I mean, or, you know, if you... And I think we're, you know... How far through interface have we gotten? We've gotten pretty far.
We're like...
We got up to the weird beds, right?
Yeah, we're
like,
well past the weird beds.
Yeah, so that's sort of like that's like a completely like horrific sort of endpoint. But
you may need to give it a little context.
Just the idea of people sort
living
of
their entire lives in VR, basically.
Yeah, living their entire lives in like, well, not even VR, but just like this. That's called the feed, and it's literally just like, you know, if you take social media now, which is just this sort of abstract form of communication and like information, which is like so not natural. like news feeds and like Twitter feeds are just like, it's not a natural way.
It's not how we're built. We're supposed to, and
we're supposed to tell stories, and we're supposed to learn from like being shown things. Or that's how humans have sort of grown up.
Yeah, the travelers who come through your village, you know, once or twice a month, if that, they tell you what's going on in the world. You have time to process it.
When you're in school, you get taught math and then science and then English, and then you go home, you go to the next day and you repeat it. Whereas like social media, it's just like, it's just like
there's
information.
No processing.
Yeah. So I think that kind of like level of connection is going to get pretty wonky and I think to a degree that I don't think it'll go to the extent that's like described in Interface or even like this in terms of like level of technology, yeah, would probably get something like that. But in terms of like what it gets used for, like I don't think people are going to be having sex in VR. Just don't think it'll happen.
Well, not anytime.
People will watch
future.
porn in VR, but like sex in VR might be a bit weird or a bit different, or just like not really be a thing people are into. But I think like what comes from that, like an interface where, you know, people are going through these like feed stories or like feed adventures, and then they get bored, so they just start like jerking off because it's like, yeah, whatever, I'll just start jerking off because you can just jerk off whenever you want and these kind of things, like that kind of just like. Whereas in this game, it's just like, oh, they're in love and they're having passion. It's just like, no, they'd just be like jerking off just the whole time.
I see what you mean.
Like, I think, and this is just like purely just like cynicism and kind of just like what I think, but I don't think there would be that kind of like pure like one-to-one.
The intensity of those connections.
Yeah, like I think it would get like.
No, I think you're right.
There'd be like a perverseness to it. Like you wouldn't get angry and like have like a, you know, like when Danny in the game gets like angry and like punches like the game over sign, which is like pretty funny. It's like that's like that kind of like emotion I feel just gets like lost when
Gets
you're
muted.
Yeah, like
Well, because we see that already on social media.
yeah, when you're scrolling social media, everyone's either just like, well, like at the moment, everyone's just screaming constantly. Like everything you see, it's just like high level anger. Like there's no, like that's the baseline.
Well, there is some nuance, and it's in a little pocket.
There's like bits here and there, but like it's usually not like. It's usually not at the forefront of like social media abuse. It's usually just like more like slightly more traditional media,
It doesn't make a
or
good
like
headline.
more nuanced kind of like.
Well, specific niches like our show or like Wisecrack. Or
Yeah,
like,
whereas
whatever,
like
yeah,
when
might
you're sort of just like going through, you know, if you go in like a comment section for like an article on Facebook, it'll just be like people having very strong opinions about whatever the article was about. Or it'll be people tagging someone else. Like it's one or the other. It's either someone who's it's their name and then someone else's name, or it's someone who's written 6 paragraphs about why they disagree with the article.
But it's no one like going through and having those like intense connections.
No one tags someone and then says, "What do you think about this?" and then has like a long conversation with that one person.
But isn't the argument then that with the VR, because I think that's because social media abstracts you enough that you feel like you can scream into the void and not have any consequence.
Right.
I wonder if when VR gets to that point and when it's 1-to-1, that maybe that isn't the case.
But this isn't this game that they're in. It's a game, and so you know when you have something as mainstream as social media. And it has sort of like social media has sort of gamified elements in it, in a sense. Things like getting likes and like adding to your friends account. Like there's techniques that they use.
It's heroin.
Yeah, you know. And when there were actual games like Farmville, those were like other ways to force you to get in. But then they realized, oh, we don't actually need to use Farmville. We can just use bad political takes.
Yeah, or just dark UX patterns, like easy shit that ruins the world.
So I feel like, you know, when you're talking about something like when you look at just like video games these days, you know, when they do shitty things like microtransactions, well, like when games are at their worst, they're not as bad as Facebook at its worst.
I see exactly what you mean.
So with this future VR game where you can bone each other, that wouldn't be as bad as that future's VR or like that future's social media.
It wouldn't be as bad as fucking Facebook now.
No, probably not.
That's the goddamn truth of it.
It seems like a fun fighting game.
Because these fuckers go about their regular day and they leave the VR at home.
Yeah.
So
then they have a good relationship.
And they have healthy relationships in their life. So
Yeah.
you're totally right. Basically what we're saying is, I think that that's fucking interesting. Yeah, because you're totally right. It is the case that as much as this social, like as much as like this VR,
like technology always gets like these days, technology gets more social as it sort of comes along and becomes more advanced.
So I think what's going to happen is, you're right. Most people would use it in the way that you described earlier, where it's like very shallow connections, just dumb nonsense.
Yeah,
and you would have a
like
very
actually sexually abusing people in this fighting
you'd
game.
have a very small niche of people who would find a way to use that to develop deep, intense emotional connections. Same thing with social media. You do have people who find like
it has to happen. Yeah, I'm sure it happens. It hasn't happened to me.
Well, I was thinking about it and I was like, I've never met Adam before, but he's like one of my better friends.
True.
Like, and probably like I'm better
But I
friends.
think like that's even because that's not just Facebook. That's across. That's more of a human connection because you have multiple.
But
You have multiple ties
but
to them.
that's what I would see the VR thing as being, because you would also have
Right.
them on your phone and
Yeah,
you like.
but that's what they have in this show. You know, they have a
Yeah.
relationship outside the VR.
yeah.
There were, you know, it's yeah. There's more to it, I think. And like again, a lot like Black Mirror, a lot of their episodes when they're set in the future, unless they're about social media, like the downfall or like the fault, the one with the social credit score, like unless it's explicitly about social media,
shit out of me.
unless it's explicitly about social media, they tend to just kind of like assume social media will stay where it is today. And it's nah.
No, it's gonna get worse.
Nah, it's gonna get much
somehow.
worse. Yeah, someone will make some app that just blows your fucking mind with how dumb it is.
Yeah, I'm scared for when that like, because it's gonna happen. Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I guess like to try and wrap it all up somehow, I think definitely a really interesting concept, and I disagree with the criticism that it didn't delve into the sexuality enough. I get why that could be a criticism. I think bad faith in this instance.
Yeah, for me,
it's more interested in that fidelity.
For me, I don't think it needed to delve in because it still made me think about things. And especially if you sort of just consider like the polyamorous angle and just the nature of these two straight men having sex with each other, like that has that's inherently like has the idea of sexuality in it. Just because it doesn't delve into the concept of these two guys are fucking and they're straight. It's just like, to me, it's like it's not the main point of the episode.
Yeah, if nothing else, it facilitates a group of people empathizing with another group of people that is hard to do.
Yes.
Because they are not a targeted minority, they are not a protected group. Straight dudes, generally speaking, we're cruising, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you can teach those people through media, if education's not doing it, we know that for a fact. If you can teach them through the media they consume,
media is a good form of education.
That's kind of the point of telling stories, is you can communicate a worldview that you couldn't access otherwise. And that's really like the point of everything. That's the point of why you watch, you know, Black Mirror or Game of Thrones or whatever it is you get access to stories that either can't happen in real life or don't happen in real life or don't happen in your life. And that's a valuable tool, and especially given the way this one is particularly structured and written and cast and executed, I think the world is probably a better place for having this episode in it. And I very rarely say that about TV or Netflix or anything in general, but I'm really glad that this exists, and I'm really impressed with Charlie Brooker once again for just taking an idea and saying, actually, how can we better people with it? And that's kind of the point of media. Do you have any recommendations for this week?
I finished Far Cry 5 and I recommend it.
But in the, when Ben got here, it was like, I want to buy the new one.
I have to buy the next one. I have to buy New Dawn.
Is it New Dawn?
Because it's a direct sequel. I'm really annoyed with how Far Cry 5 ends.
Yeah.
And I'm mad and I want to play the next one.
You want to play the next one? Okay.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's rough, dude.
Yeah. 'Cause it's more
I
expensive.
oh really? Same engine though, isn't it?
Well, because it's newer.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah, it
brutal.
still has that price.
I rewatched John Wick, the first one, last night. Not that impressed. It's not a recommendation. Just go back and watch it. I would love to know. I would love to know what you guys think going back now.
Right.
I was telling Pat in the car, I was like, kind of shrugged my shoulders at it.
Yeah.
Dunno. Not that thrilled by it compared to the other two. Not as much world building as what I
Started
liked.
watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So
Okay, weird, cool.
that's a weird one.
Yeah.
I will report back when I've watched them all.
Yeah, please do. Otherwise, where can people find us?
Facebook.
At DCMWorks Social.
YouTube.
YouTube.com/DCMWorks.
Twitter.
At DCM_works.
Patreon.
Patreon.com/DCMWorks. Our subscriptions start at $3 a month. You get access to all kinds of great behind-the-scenes content, as well as our post show that we do almost every week if it's not too late. This post show that we're doing right now is going to be about our reaction to E3 2019.
Wow, video games.
Video games. So if you like VR and you like video games, fucking check that out. If you're watching it live, we're going to have a 5-minute break and then come back. The post show comes out in both an audio format on the RSS feed that you can subscribe to, so it's a private Patreon-only RSS feed, and also in video format if you want to watch it that way. So depending on your preference, you can get it one or two ways. You also get early access to all kinds of videos. Also, like, in-progress stuff, too. So there's a video essay I'm working on that's up there now, as well as a weird video that Adam and I are working on, so that you're involved in.
I am in that one.
So you can check all that out.
I can see me.
And Adam and I are working on a comprehensive developer diary of that video, because it's become quite complex.
Jesus Christ.
So there'll be a 4-part series of like how
Oh
he
my
made it happen.
God. Well, yeah, Adam's been telling me that he's been filming just a fuck ton of B-roll.
Yeah, I've been working with him a
Like
lot. So
camera on for hours and hours.
it's
going to
be great.
lapse.
The video
It's
itself is going to
insane.
be fantastic. Otherwise, I also wanted to plug. I was on an episode of Slopfest a few weeks ago. It's our friend James's podcast.
Sloppy as fuck.
It's incredible. We're recording another one this week, hopefully, which is going to be buck wild. Check out the latest episode. It's kind of
fucking weird.
It's very dank. The latest episode is all I can say. There's a lot of dick talk.
You're not allowed to say that word.
Am I too old to say dank?
You're way too old.
Shit. Bleep that, future David.
Yeah, we'll bleep that out.
Otherwise, if you want to follow us individually, I'm at DC My Head Pie.
I'm at Literal Citrus.
We'll see you guys next week.